Welcome to the Coptimizer podcast, a platform dedicated to uncuffing your true potential in public safety. We're here to provide you with valuable tips and insights that will help you optimize your life and career. I'm retired Chief Patrick Flanley, and I'm honored to be your guide and coach on this journey. Here, I'll share the latest insights and strategies to help you survive and thrive in the demanding world of public safety. Our noble duty is to protect and serve. We embody the role of peacemakers in our communities. However, this profession's immense physical and mental demands come with a price. If we fail to take a proactive approach for our well-being and lead ourselves first, then the stress from the job can and will lead to poor health outcomes. We have all seen it play out. Not only does this impact our professional and personal lives, but it also affects our ability to fulfill this sacred duty. Like many of you, my journey has been filled with tremendous challenges, with highs and lows. However, through creativity, experience, and a positive attitude, I successfully managed over 30 years in law enforcement, emerging healthy and happy. Now, I am driven to share what I've learned to show you that the path is not all doom and gloom. There is hope and a profound purpose in serving your community, and I'm here to show you that it does not have to come at the cost of your health and well-being. Join us as we explore cutting-edge research, interview top experts, and share inspiring stories of transformation. Whether on duty or off, it's time to optimize your potential and live your best life. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. This is the Coptimizer Podcast. Greetings all, welcome back to another episode of the Coptimizer Podcast. I say this every week, or I should say every episode, because it's not every week, but I'm always looking for new and interesting type of people and that I'm going to be excited about having this conversation with. And I had the opportunity to get on Joe Swanson's podcast a couple weeks ago, and we got to the end, and I was like, man, I wanted to keep chatting. We were just getting to the good stuff. So
hmm
flipped the script a little bit, and I said, all right, well, you're gonna have to come be a guest on the Coptimizer, and I think everyone's gonna get a lot out of this, and we're gonna see a little different perspective today, and I'm looking forward to it. Joe, thanks for being here.
Man, Pat, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it too. I had the same sentiment about that conversation. I'm sort of a fitness head myself and have been active all my life. And then, I think we're aligned on a lot of the ideas around policing and then mental health and resilience and these things that keep cops fit and conditioned both in their body and mind. And so, man, I had the same view. I got done with that conversation. I was like, man, that was a fun one. And so, man, I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here and really looking forward to chatting with you, man.
Yeah, we got a few mutual friends in common that connected us, and I think sometimes that's the great thing about this whole podcasting universe. And we were just chatting a little bit before I hit record, and I was like, "Man, I just got to hit the damn button." So because we're gonna have all the fun conversations, and it's not going to be recorded. But so Joe, you're a former police officer.
Yep.
You're a police resiliency trainer. One of the things that we talked a little bit about, and I think that you specialize in, if that's the right word for it, but you like to focus heavily on burnout prevention, a lot of emphasis on which really, this resonates with me is personal responsibility.
Yeah.
As a former chief, and one of the things that we were talking about is the LinkedIn universe and LinkedIn leadership land and social media leadership. There's a lot of Charlemagne's out there, but there's also a lot of really, really good people out there that you
Mm,
can learn a lot from. And like as a chief, you get a lot of grenades tossed your way, and you know what? And we
mm,
own some of those things. And personally, I made a lot of mistakes, but I think I did a lot of things well too. But the one area where I know that we'll probably have a lot of common ground is like, it's easy to point fingers. When you point one finger at someone else, you always have to remember the adage that three are coming back at you. So,
right.
but yeah, I mean, those are some of the things like that you focus on: humility, character, stress
Yeah.
regulation, Coptimizer. We talk about that a lot, and
Yeah.
so you like to generate a lot of content around the future of policing, officer wellness,
Mhm.
and recruitment, retention, all those things. But
Yeah.
going back to what you just said, we had the fitness stuff in common. I know we chatted a little bit about CrossFit, and we'll just get right at it. But if you walked into a CrossFit gym, you'd be right at home, right?
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
cop, you could walk
Totally.
in. But if you walked into an old timer cop gym, you might get a few second looks. You got a lot of body art, and uh,
Yeah.
that's one
It's
that we're going to
different.
have to jump into that at some point, right?
Man, for sure, it's different. You know, that there modern policing is different in so many ways. You know, I came up in 2000 to 2008, so I had 8 years highway patrol and a PD. So I saw a huge department, 6,000 plus officers across the state of California. Um, and then I went to a smaller PD and I saw that culture and that environment. And on the leadership side, I was fortunate to work with some really great leaders, and I also had some assholes that I worked for. And I think it all comes back to what you said earlier that you touched on is that personal responsibility. Like, what are you doing to optimize yourself? Are you into case law? Do you know policy better than they do? Do you, can you lead where your 2 feet stand, whether you got two weeks on or 2 weeks to retirement? Like, what's your view on it? I coach and I train so much around personal responsibility and perspective. And yeah, when I came in, brother, the perspective on this much body art was completely different. I blew the doors open for CHP, and they had never seen anything like me. I tell this story a lot and it's how I start a lot of my trainings because stress started at the academy and it didn't stop for me through the academy once I got out. Um, and a lot of that stress was coming from inside the department. I would say that's the only place I ever got negative feedback about being fully sleeved. And I had been a tattooer before coming on, didn't have people in law enforcement that were in my family. I just thought it would be a fun job that I could play some cat and mouse. Like you're trying to get away with something, I'm trying to catch you. We both have rules. Like let's play this game. Let's not kill each other. And some nights I'm gonna win. Some days you're gonna win. Most of the time you're gonna win. And let's go for it. And so yeah, I came in and um, I led with my character, not with what I looked like, right? And I was taught that as a kid. You lead with your character, and I think it was the way that I showed up that shifted a lot of people's mindset around who's this guy that's fully sleeved out? We've never seen anything like it. We have no policy on it. The commissioner's coming out to the academy, creeping around the corner, trying to see who this guy is. It's got all these tattoos. He hated them, and the staff office is talking to the senior class and everybody, you can't talk about it with them. You can't say anything. If anybody says anything, you'll get kicked out right away. Like there was a whole era there that knew about Joe Swanson coming through the CHP Academy. And again, man, I was happy to be there. I was excited to be there, and I tried to lead with my character, and it's what has served me well.
So is the tattoo policy called the Swanson policy?
I affectionately call it that for sure. I mean, there's guys, I had a guy, Stoney, on my podcast, and there was guys that had some visible tattoos and stuff that would be seen in short sleeves, but nobody that had full sleeves, wrap around, wrist to shoulder, heavily covered. And so it took him about 5 years from, Spike Helmuth, the commissioner at that time, coming up, making a special trip to the academy to see what they had gotten themselves into to put that policy out. But I still have it framed in my house right now. That first policy that came out, and it's sparked a little bit of a um, percolating comments on Instagram. I posted about it a few times, and I love to get in those conversations, Patrick, about should cops have visible tattoos? Does it degrade the quality or the professionalism of a cop showing up to a scene? And I crack up the comments like, oh, well, I'd hate seeing somebody show up looking like a prison, the guy that just got out of prison that robbed me, showing up to help me out. And I'm like, pump the brakes here a little bit. Like, we got to understand that there's different levels to, just like everything, there's different levels to quality of tattoo. And again, so much tattoos become wallpaper when you show up with the right attitude, compassion, empathy, focus, and attention to the right things. Even the little old ladies would hug me before I left and say, "Thank you, Miss, Officer Swanson. I appreciate you." And so it's more about how you're showing up than about what you look like showing up. In my opinion.
Well, in that sense, then you're like the likely the nationwide trendsetter because a lot of trends in policing, for better or worse, right, come out of California. You have
Yeah.
the Ninth Circuit there, so there's a lot of case law that comes out of
Yeah.
California that sometimes you know people get a little hyped up about,
Yeah.
but LAPD has always been and CHP both, I think, have been leaders in a lot of different ways, from
Yeah.
tactics to professionalism overall. And
Hmm.
so yeah, it's interesting. And I'm thinking back, I was the chief that changed our policy to allow visible tattoos. And,
Uh-huh.
going through the policy discussions and hearing the opinions. Like there was some stalwarts before me that would just like nope, nope. And me personally, I never really gave it much thought, and until I had to, right? Until the issue was forced
Sure.
on me, like
Yeah. And for me, look, for me, I was in short sleeves those first 5 years. Um, and then it changed. I wasn't grandfathered in. I went into long sleeves. When I lateraled over to Vacaville PD, that chief that had come out of Oakland, he was progressive, but not that progressive because he implemented a policy right away. And I went into long sleeves at that department too. Look, it never bothered me, to go into long sleeves and to play that game. Like I didn't feel, segregated or ousted those weren't the things that were challenging to me. It was other leadership deficiencies. It was other, stress load that wasn't being regulated by me. It was my nervous system being out of whack, hypervigilance. Those were the things that were real challenges. The tattoo stuff, I had been a tattooer. I had sat in tattoo shops and was tattooing a Hell's Angel in the morning and grandma in the afternoon, or many times grandma and the Hell's Angel or the gangster were getting tattooed at the same time, and everybody was vibing out, having a good time, listening to music, and they were both checking each other's workout, and it was commonality between cultures. And
So,
so,
so touch on
um,
that, touch on that just a bit because I want like so for people that don't know you, you were a tattoo artist before you became a cop. How old were you when you started policing? And kind of, I'm interested to kind of, I like
Mhm.
the cat and mouse game, the curiosity. I think that's the
Yeah.
mindset that we need to find in policing. And we've gotten to this point
Yeah.
where we got so worried about um, the candidates and the exposure that if you didn't uncover certain things in a background that like the agency was going to be liable, and we started just ruling out people left and right. And one of the reasons why for a long time we eliminated candidates was because of visible tattoos or what the tattoo might actually represent. Now, clearly there are some tattoos that need to be covered. And I don't think that, I've never heard anyone that's pro, body art, that's anti-tattoo policy. Generally, it's like, yeah, if somebody's got a picture of that depicts nudity or something that's vulgar, then
Right. Yeah.
those are, it also opens up some different avenues in terms of, what you're going to look for in a background investigation. Is there a character issue here? Is there an integrity issue? Or is it just more of a,
Yeah.
someone going through a phase in life, especially young men whose prefrontal cortex does not fully develop until around age 25. So, you know, and,
Yeah. I was,
I was probably
I
closer to
totally get
30.
it. Right. Yeah, I was 27 when I came in, and I had just finished up college. I had went and gotten my college degree in business, emphasis in entrepreneurship. That's coming back around, has served me well as also running my own business, multiple businesses in my lifetime. And I think also having an understanding of structure and business was also helpful in policing because there was a full this regimented, structured life around what you had to accomplish on a case or in an investigation was really actually helpful to me as a young man. So I came in and I was 27 years old. Prior to that, for the five or so years prior to that, I had been a tattooer. I'd gotten into that while I was in college, worked as a tattooer all through college in the late 90s during this sort of explosion of tattooing where it became less of you walk into a tattoo shop and you see all the designs on the wall, and those are sales aids. That's called flash. It's been around since the beginning. And it was like you used to just walk in and I want that one. All right, you pick it, I'll stick it. And um, there wasn't a lot of variability. There wasn't a lot of customization to those things. Maybe you could say, well, I don't want the rose red, I want it blue, or something, or I'm from Texas, make it yellow. And but in the 90s, and I would say in the late 80s, Ed Hardy, who many people know just as a guy who did a t-shirt brand, but he was a forerunner in tattooing. He was a fine artist, super smart, and he pushed the idea that you could get a custom tattoo. And then, there was some other people in the sphere at that time that were doing the same thing. It caught on with a lot of young hotshot tattooers that really took that to the next level. And so I came up in a time where you could get custom work, and it was starting to be the norm that you would draw something for somebody when they came in. Maybe they got some ideas off the wall, but it wasn't as it was starting to shift to a different place. And so I did that for many years. Started in California in Monterey under a great mentor named Steve Hendricks. I still talk to him. And then in Minnesota, worked for another guy who was incredible, incredible artist. He was a little bit of a wild card. Rest in peace, Tom Generu. He was on, antidepressants and weed, and he'd fly off the handle as quick as he would calm down. And it taught me a lot about communication and not only holding space but holding my own space and leadership in a confrontation. um and I got my chops up in that tattoo shop. It was busy. University town of St. Cloud, Minnesota, where I got my degree. And we were humping. We'd walk in on a Saturday and it would be a stack of paperwork people already filled out and you're ready to go, and you're just working all day tattooing. And I think that work ethic also rubbed in off on me into something my dad instilled in me, but also into policing. I took that idea of being able to communicate. Two of the best qualities, Patrick, that I got from policing and tattooing, and they came from both. I learned immense amounts from both these things, intentionality and communication. I was able to speak with people and control a situation with my language and my voice and intentionality. You had to be super intentional with a tattoo and the way you drew it because you're taking somebody's like really heartfelt memory likely, and you are making an image that's going to be on their skin for the rest of their life, guaranteed till 2 weeks after death. I always used to joke. And um that's how good my work is. And you know intention, you had to be intentional because they're either going to walk out of there super stoked, and every time they look at that piece, they're going to remember you. And then in policing, your intention means whether I go home or not at the end of the shift a lot of times, right? You have to be super intentional about your words, what you're doing, um, your training capacity, your communication capacity, all of those things. And so, which again, it's why I'm so happy to coach and train the stuff that I do now in the way that I do because it teaches a lot of that stuff and gives people more access to it.
That's interesting. A lot to pick up on there. I, I wouldn't have thought, but it makes perfect sense, but I wouldn't have thought, hey, one of the best skills that I'm going to take out of a tattoo shop into policing is the ability to communicate and hold your space. And
Yeah.
and that is so important in policing. It's so important. And
Yeah.
kind of getting at what like earlier, we I think we went through this phase where we were looking for the perfect type of candidate, squeaky clean background, criminal justice major, or
Right.
something along those lines. And uh, you know, the best cops, and anyone will tell you, the best cops that you've ever met are always the ones that came for, had some hardship. They understand the street, they understand people, they're great communicators,
Yeah.
they're empathetic,
Yeah.
and that empathy is,
Right.
people can feel it, they can sense it because they're sincere. And
Yeah.
I was a bit of a blunt force object, I think, in my early policing days. And I had been in the military, went to college. I will say, like, I think, man, I used to talk about this all the time. I worked as a server in college and bartended, I started
Same.
working at the door, and then I was a server and a bartender, and I wound up becoming a restaurant manager. And I was doing that. Um, yeah, of course, so we're going to get a lawnmower going out in the background here. So we'll see.
I,
We'll
I
see if
can't
you,
hear it, so we're good.
well, when he gets right up to my window, we're going to hear it. So everybody out there, you're going to know I'm getting my grass mowed. And anyway, the interesting thing for me is, one, you had to learn to communicate with people. You had to learn to communicate with intoxicated people that were irrational. But I worked in a very, very busy campus bar. And, for anyone out there from West Lafayette or Purdue, at a campus bar called Harry's Chocolate Shop, we did not serve chocolate, but pretty cool old Prohibition era bar. There's
Wow.
pieces of the old speakeasy that were underneath a trap door in the basement of this place, and a lot of cool history to it. But being so busy, you would have to really be able to stack things in your mind. You had to memorize things. Like there were so many different skills that I took away from that I eventually brought into policing that I didn't realize, like, hey, wow, these skills really
Yeah.
transfer.
Life
Um,
experience, man. I mean, it's the same, again, it's the same in a tattoo shop where you have to control that room, and you might have the little old lady and the gangster in there at the same time, and you have to speak to them in a different way, and you have to be able to state switch and a little bit back and forth. And obviously there's certain qualities that you want to lead with, and I think curiosity is one, but you don't speak to them the same way. And that was huge. And then you knew also that things could crack off in a heartbeat. There's been plenty of times I threw people out of the tattoo shop, and it was I we had in the tattoo shop, there was a Louisville Slugger and a little tire knocker. And this is something I had in my tattoo shop when I owned one as well. It was called the manager and the assistant manager. And which one do you want to talk to? And we can just, keep it at the lowest level possible. But if we got to take it there, we got to take it there. And again, I think like some of that mentality goes, I'm not looking for a fight. It goes into policing also. Like I had my tools at my disposal. I'm looking at using this tool and this tool on the podcast you were on. For me, it was like the best tool that we can bring is 6 inches of space, up here in our head, our brain. And it runs the thought process, and it runs the mouth motor. And I think um, if we can find those people that are good at talking and good at connecting, those are much better skills than somebody that can critically think. Those are much better skills than the person that's just the yes man or yes lady that's going to just do exactly what they're told. There's time for that, but yeah, it's interesting how life can teach you things.
yeah, and I mean the CSI effect was real. The for those maybe that didn't watch the show, that show kind of changed also a lot of the personality types and people that were coming into policing. It was a fascinating, it was an interesting show, obviously completely unrealistic in the way they work and wrap up cases, but interestingly nonetheless, there's a couple actually pieces of technology that were developed at Purdue that were featured on a couple episodes. So that was always
Oh,
Purdue
fascinating.
University right here in our hometown. So, but there was a point where you could see this coming a long way off. We began hiring this generation of cop that had less and less social interaction. They played
Mhm.
less and less youth sports. They had parents that resolved conflict for them. Everything was laid out
Mhm.
for them. And they're on this path. Oh, you go to high school and then you go to college and then you get hired at a police department. And, year three, you're a sergeant. Year five, you're canine and SWAT or whatever specialty you want. You're CSI,
Right.
right? Or you skip all of that and go right to CSI.
Yeah.
And, but a common trait that we saw in a lot of young recruits was difficulty having conversations, establishing rapport, looking somebody in the eye and talking to them. And it's still an issue to this day. And so you really have to kind of build that understanding into your training program when you're pushing people out. And I don't blame young recruits for that deficiency. It's just a byproduct of the way society is, and
Sure.
you have to adapt and you have to understand that. And I think that's where a lot of agencies get in trouble is because, they don't want to adapt. They want the individual to adapt to them and not the other way around. Like, if you want to work for us, this is the way we do it here. And,
That's
that,
one of the most dangerous mentalities that
yeah,
one can have. And I know this from being in the corporate space, and for sure what I see in law enforcement. And man, you hit the nail on the head. Like you have to adapt to the changing times. And if you say, you know what, this is the way we're going to do it, and it's because we've always done it this way, and this should work still, Like, come on. Like, that's such an antiquated idea and mentality that you're going to have, and it's going to hurt you. You are going to be one of those departments out there that are going to lose people. So your retention is going to be shitty, and you are going to not be able to recruit people because you are holding on to these old adages. And I think to your point, Patrick, you can educate people in a new way, throw in some new training blocks in there about communication and really lean people into that along with the other stuff that's super critical, the tactics and the firearms and the combatives and the report writing and all that kind of stuff, the ethics, right? And you can teach them communication. You can teach them command presence. You can work with them on that stuff. You can't expect it right away.
Right. And I will say, and again, going back to tattoos, our policy was like if you couldn't have a visible tattoo. So if you had them, you just had to cover them up. And I can see now, like, and you told me this last when we chatted last, but you have tattoos that are visible above the neckline on the hands now. You said
Yep.
but you didn't have those while you were working in uniform. That's something that you did post your law enforcement career. Um, but
Yeah.
here's where it's from an important leadership lesson. I had the people that were running my admin division at the time that were kind of challenging me on this, like, hey, chief, like we got to get with the times here. Like we're going to miss out on people.
Mhm.
Like they're going to go to another agency just because we make them wear long sleeve shirts in the summer instead of being able to wear short sleeves
Yeah.
because they have a tattoo of a heart or something on their hand. And so I do credit people with pushing me a little bit on it to just to kind of take a step back and say, well, why do we have this policy? And if others are doing it, including the military, then why wouldn't we just adapt? And to your point, guess how many complaints in my 10 years, my 10-year tenure as chief, after we made the policy change, guess how many complaints I got from the community about someone's tattoos?
Zero.
Zero, zero. And then when we later added facial hair, oh my God, beards and goatees were going to be the death of me too. And you know, we we changed the policy. You're allowed to have beards, you're allowed to have tattoos, and
Mhm.
uh, guess how many complaints I got from the community about beards? Zero. All
Zero.
the internal
Yeah, look,
strife that
man.
it
Yep.
generated, and nobody outside our walls gave a shit.
Right. And I see a lot of even there's some great chiefs. I always mention these two. The now former Edwin Lopez, the former chief of Doral PD, now Miami, City of Miami chief, tattoos all the way down to the wrist. Apex PD in, I think, North Carolina. That chief is fully sleeved out, both arms, and standing in recruitment videos, like looking sharp. And it's a different time, man. Like there is one out of every three people out in the world have tattoos now. And you can't, when I came on, somebody with sleeves, like full sleeves, was either a tattooer or maybe they were a criminal, or they
Or a
were
Hell's Angel, yeah.
yeah, a Hells Angel, they were a gangster, they were but you could tell the difference also in the quality of the work, or they were straight blue collar and it didn't matter. Construction workers and that kind of stuff, um, refinery workers, and it's different now. You got, I worked in corporate. I was a leader. I was head of growth for a software company, executive level. I was working with people with full sleeves, right? You see it all over. Your marketing people, your HR people, like, the task doers, they're all sleeved out now. So um, you have to really, again, have your head in the sand if you don't think that it's more acceptable now, and these ideas that everyone's the same if they have tattoos. That's the other comment I love to laugh at is the idea that, my tattoos and me are just the same as the gangsters' tattoos and prison tattoos, or we're lumped into the same we're lumped into the same group there because of it. And I just think it's old thinking that is detrimental to a lot of departments. But again, like you got to ride with what you feel like your community is going to be up for. I think you should take counsel on that stuff. I think you should do some deep thinking about it. And there might be places that policy is better to have long sleeves. Again, I went into back into long sleeves after 5 years. I didn't care. I worked 112-degree days. I had my cool cop that shot cool air down my vest. And I just thought it was great that I wasn't going to get the sun on my tattoos to burn them out. So
Yeah, I was
I don't
gonna
know. It's
say
all
that's
mentality,
probably
man.
yeah, those and I know they make now the uniform sleeves that people with tattoos like and we did have so we had a few officers that had tattoos that were required to wear long sleeves or the tattoo sleeve, just based on what the art depicted. Um and
Sure.
I think that was always a fair compromise. But yeah, it is interesting. And like my parents, my mom is 93 years old. My dad, I lost him a few years ago now, but I'll never forget. So when I was in basic training, this was in 1986, right? So I'm hinting at my age here.
Mm.
And in my basic training flight, and then both of them also became security police with me, but I had a Hatfield and a McCoy, and they were both bloodlines to the
Those
Ohio
families.
Kentucky rivalry. And when the first day that we had Liberty down in San Antonio, the first weekend, I go downtown with McCoy, and he gets a tattoo on his arm, and it was this striking eagle, like in the striking eagle pose. And it's got the USAF banner on it, and then he's holding a lightning bolt in its
Perfect.
claws, flag in the background. And I was, I'm 19 years old. I'm thinking this is badass, and I'm like, I'm coming next week. I'm coming back and I'm getting one. I'm getting that tattoo because I thought it was really cool. Now, he was the
Yeah.
state champion wrestler, that had guns on him. I was a 19-year-old skinny
Right.
dude. Like, I'm like, it, it wasn't going to look the same on me. But I'll never forget. I called my mom, and this is funny because my kids don't understand this. They're all pretty, the age of cell phones, and they're not young either. But I had to go wait in line to use the phone, and then use a calling
Yep.
card to call home. And then I'm on the phone with my mom, and I was like, she asked, like, I just given her an update, and then I told her, I was like, oh yeah, and I went down to the Riverwalk in San Antonio, and I went with my friend, and he got a tattoo, and it's really cool. And next week, I'm going to go back and get one myself. And my mom was like, "What? What'd you say?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to go get a tattoo." And um, I didn't hear anything else except this loud clunk. It was the phone hitting the floor, and then my dad's name was Frank, and my mom was just screaming, "Frank, Frank!" She just left. Like she just literally dropped the phone in the middle of the conversation.
Hilarious.
And
Shock and awe.
yeah, and and my mom, they're both, from a completely different generation. And
Yeah.
tattoos back then were, they were looked upon a lot differently. But it's funny because even that older generation, they still kind of carry that mindset with them. And my wife, oh, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I think most people that know her know she has a few tattoos. They're not
Mhm.
visible. And my mom, geez, it's kind of funny. It's just that as you look at this generation today, to your point, I don't think anyone looks twice at tattoos. I really don't. They're so ubiquitous in
Right.
society. They're everywhere.
Yep.
My generation, it's hit or miss, right? 10
Right.
years younger than me, you're getting into that territory where, you know,
Makes no difference.
You
Yeah.
know, and it doesn't change, someone's character, their integrity, their competence.
Right.
Yeah.
My dad hated it. My dad hated it. Like he didn't like my first tattoo that I got. He hated my second one. It was on my forearm. He was warning me, you're going to have to make completely different decisions and now that you have this and you're going to get judged for it. And again, it never stopped me from doing anything that I wanted, but he was from that idea, that age, right? That he just didn't like it. It was a different thing. And
How old were you when you got your first tattoo, if you don't mind me asking?
18, I went with a girlfriend from high school, and we both went to that shop in St. Cloud that I ended up working at later in my life. Um, you know, 5, 6 years later, I was working there, finishing up school, and we went and got tattoos that, as soon as we turned 18. And,
Is her
prior
name still on you?
No, I didn't get a
I'm just
name.
kidding.
Yeah, I didn't get her name. Now, I've subsequently gotten other names of wives and things on me, and some of them are covered. This one on my neck is not covered. She's still my son's mom. I'm not, my wife now is fine with it. Like they have a good relationship. It's like, um, so I do have names on me,
It's
and I've
like
covered.
rings on a tree, right? It's like
Right.
rings on a tree.
Yeah. But yeah, my dad didn't like it. And my mom ended up I tattooed my mom also. And, um, she loves it. She said if I would have been younger and your dad would have been a little more open-minded about it, she goes, I probably would have gotten more as well. But she loves that having that experience of me tattooing her. And the only person I haven't tattooed is my brother, my brother out of my family. He never got one. And so
Well, I've
but
been
yeah,
saying I'm going to get one for over 30 years and I still don't have one.
you got to
And
get that striking eagle, man. That thing's badass. Like
I'll tell you what I want. I tell you, this is what I want. And the only reason I haven't is because I change my mind a lot. And
there you
like,
go.
so like now I had looked at recently, I looked at those, there's a company that makes the temporary ones where you can design
Sure.
them on your own. So
Yep.
you could put it on. I'm like, well, now maybe I should do that because then I would get to see it for a few weeks and decide whether but no, I've always been like my name is Patrick, right? So Flannelly, I have a little bit of Irish heritage, but
Hmm.
also Saint Michael is the patron
Hmm.
saint of the military, the patron saint of law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of like I love you can see in my background here the statue
Yep.
of Saint Michael that I have.
God, I've
But
done a lot of those tattoos in my day, man. So many St. Michael's, and they're great. I've done them in color and black and gray. I've done them as sleeves. What a great it's great imagery, right? It works
yeah.
great on the body depending on where you're getting it at. And so yeah, it's an
I
awesome.
just never I don't want the demon on my body. Like I want
Mhm.
Saint Michael, but I don't
Yeah.
want a demonic image on my body. So I'm like, all right, I could get some feather. I could do like a red, white, and blue theme and the feathers. All right, we'll talk about it afterwards. If I ever,
I
maybe I'll
love it.
have you help me design one and maybe
Absolutely. And I
then
can I
maybe
can
I'll look at it. But
Yeah, and
we
we
should
can
pro
definitely get you lined up with the right artists. Like there's so many amazing artists that are out there nowadays. It's so easy to get a great tattoo. Now there's more artists out there, so it's easy to get a shitty tattoo as well. But if you get tapped into the right circles, you can find those people that are going to be incredible and just do amazing work for you. I had throwing this t-shirt on because these are my guys. Sullen Clothing is they're in the tattoo industry. I had done a podcast when we first started talking. I think I had mentioned that I've done hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes in my life, produced them, hosted them, edited them, and in different capacities. And the very first was a tattoo podcast in 2012, and you can still find some of those interviews And around 2013 or 14, I was looking for a bigger platform to talk about the things that happen in tattoo shops and about the industry. And it was changing rapidly at that time. And I hooked up with these guys, my friends, Jeremy and Ryan, who still own it. And if you love tattoo art, and these are the guys for you, sullenclothing.com, and go look at that stuff. It's amazing. And I would be surprised if they didn't have a Saint Michael design somewhere in there, years of doing t-shirts. Maybe something we got to talk to them about.
All right, all right. We'll continue that offline, and
The
maybe you'll finally be the straw that
impetus to
breaks the
getting it.
camel's back here,
Yeah.
and gets me to it. But um, it is one of the things that I was kind of thinking back to earlier because you were talking about like some of the like the internal pressures that you were having in policing and like that and were whether it's because of your personality or tattoos or poor leadership or different leadership styles and then you also mentioned something about your background being in business and we touched a little bit on this but I kind of want to dive into this because I'm interested to hear more about why like your personal motivation behind why you're coaching now
Mhm.
and why you think it's needed, where you're benefiting people and what primarily my audience is law enforcement leadership,
Yeah.
health and wellness optimization. And I think there's probably an important conversation to be had because like when we first started this podcast, we were part of Axon Coaching and Performance
Mhm.
Protocol, a company that was new into the space of coaching in policing. And I think it was a concept that was it wasn't really well received, or maybe it was, and I think primarily because it just wasn't understood. And I think that's like people are like, oh, what do I don't need a life coach, like whatever. So that sometimes that cop personality can really get in our own way. And I know it's about five or six different things kind of all wrapped up, but I think
Yeah.
probably knowing, based on our previous conversation, um, you know,
Yeah.
you'd be able
It's
to
a
explain that.
100%. Let me unpack it because I do think you're right that in the business world, mentorship is just it's a standard thing. You're going to go find a business mentor so that you can optimize. You want to talk about optimizing and
Yeah.
learning. You're going to go find that person that's done something more than you, and you're gonna educate yourself underneath them so that you can then rise to the occasion. And the rising tide lifts all ships. So as you do that, people below you are going to rise as well. And I think that it's that idea of nobody gets into policing without mentorship of some sort. That happens at the academy. It happens through an FTO program. It happens in those conversations with your sergeant, oftentimes, or your leadership. And so this is also mentorship. This is also coaching. Now, some of those coaches aren't very good, and you have to be mindful about it. But I think that the reason I got into it, the reason I do it now, my ethos of coaching others is to help them succeed more, is to be the best version of themselves and to lift those around them. And so obviously my program starts with nervous system regulation because that is from wisdom of experience, from my experience as a law enforcement officer. I let that stress load stack so much, and I was trained to handle the chaos at work. But I would take that load home, and it would carry over into my relationship with my wife and my kids and my community. And then ultimately, it became detrimental at work as well because I was disconnected. I was frustrated. I didn't know if this was even the thing for me anymore. I'd lost that passion to for the cat and mouse game and the hunt and the protect and serve ideology. And I didn't understand it. What I understand today, and the reason I'm saying this is because you can change that. You can flip the script on it if you understand what stress will do to your body, both physically and mentally. And if you get ahead of it with stress load management, nervous system regulation, that kind of stuff as a foundation, well, it makes everything easier. And you get to access the skills that you train so hard. So my coaching with individuals and then my workshops with departments is absolutely a core pillar of that is nervous system regulation because I think it is it is so critical to regulate yourself. Then what I'm going to teach you about not seeking validation outside of yourself, right? Create it with your own actions, daily habits that become consistent. Is how often do people dive into daily habits and say, I'm going to work out today and I'm going to eat right today and I'm going to, I'm not going to get frustrated with my kids anymore like this. And then that falls off 2 days later. Why? Well, because we're not regulated and we don't have the capacity and the energy and the space in our own experience to make those things stick. And so what we do is we work on the nervous system. We then work on the habits and the validation seeking and people pleasing that so often people fall into. And we start creating that validation from within. And when you do that, your life will change when you take personal responsibility for your own actions. And when you start showing up as the father, the husband, the worker, the leader that you know you can be, but you just don't have the energy and capacity to stick with, your life will change. And that goes across the board, whether this is in business. And if you're thinking about leaving law enforcement and you want to, and you, oh, I need to change my department. I need to change the assignment that I'm in and you think that's going to help you, well, who are you taking with to that new place, that new department, that new assignment? Your ass you're taking with you. So if you don't fix yourself, then what's going to show up in that new assignment? All those other habits, the frustration, the impatience, the stuff that's going to just tag along with you. And again, Patrick, I'm speaking from wisdom of experience because I thought leaving the CHP to go to a PD was going to be the grass is greener. I thought that leaving the PD to go to Minnesota from California and moving my family across the state, across the country to tattoo again was going to be the grass is greener. I thought that moving from Minnesota back to California and get my wife and family closer to the community that we once had was going to be the grass is greener. I still ended up divorced, struggling with my relationship with my kids, struggling with my self-belief and all of these things because I was bringing that along with me. It wasn't until I dealt with internal trauma and my external expression that things got really good in my life. And so I train and I coach and I walk people down this path because I've lived it. And I don't want you to have to stub your toe along the way as much as I did. And so it's an absolute passion that I have to do it. And um, I love seeing the results that somebody can get when they start attacking these little things. It's not going to be easy, but there's a path to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a great place to start, right? Nothing worthwhile is easy. I mean, that's kind of, I
Yep.
mean, and all I could think of was like the, the old expression, right? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah, check yourself. That is
Uh,
so poignant for this
Yeah.
conversation. Like you have to deal with yourself first. And we say it in I'm a longtime meditator. It's part of the methods that I use to regulate myself, to maintain a view of life in a certain way. And at the beginning of every meditation that I do, there's a part of it that says you can't help somebody if you're confused or disturbed yourself. And it's a fact. And so it's great. I appreciate you raising that point out of this conversation.
Well, I mean, we're kind of we're two sides of the same coin in our approach. And I think what a lot of people fail to recognize is we, especially in policing, we all struggle from the same things. We
Hmm.
may have some different outlets that we can use to release or to adapt or to cope, but we also have different, we have different triggers and different, pathways. I don't know, like trigger if it's the right word. I'm not a psychologist,
Right, me neither.
and so, but again, having been there, like one of the things, one of the programs that I do now is I run a program called Lead Yourself First, and I get the opportunity to teach this to all the new police chiefs in Indiana as part of a wellness class that we do for their onboarding as a chief, and for the very reason that you just said, right? It's hard to lead others if you can't lead yourself. And people in policing, whether you're in a leadership position or not, we all get into this profession because, cliche as it sounds, we want to help people, and service is kind of just a part of our identity, what we want to do. Now, there's a lot of variance to that, but I think at its core, that's generally why people get into this profession. And I think that's also part of our downfall is that a lot of times as a guardian or as a protector, as a warrior, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Like we have a tendency to um, do things for others before we do them for ourselves, and that even to our own demise.
Yeah.
And my lesson to leaders, and this applies to anyone at any level in life, really, and not just policing, but policing in particular is, the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you learn that, the sooner that you engage with that and start to build practices that will help you, kind of get back into, that journey of self-discovery, the better off you're going to be and the better off everyone around you is going to be.
Yeah.
Because if you don't
It's
check yourself,
yeah,
it's,
you're gonna wreck yourself.
yeah.
And it's so true. And I think I like to reiterate this point that you can be a hard charger. You can be really good at your job. You can show up and control chaos very well. And so often you go home and things at the home are out of control, whether that's with the partner, with the kids, with the community, with yourself, and you don't understand that. That's confusing. And I like to make the analogy that you don't go to bed with your gun belt on, right? Why are you going to bed with it running around in your mental? Your mental is still running on high a pace, and you have to understand that taking off that uniform physically, you also have to understand how you can take it off mentally. And I think a lot of that comes from, again, regulation and understanding that the more you're getting into at work, the more likely that stress load's going to build. And at some point, it's going to weigh on you in a different way. And you can have really, really great capacity. But if you don't have flexibility, then that capacity at some point is going to fall short. But if you can build both of them, capacity, resilient capacity, which many people are have built over their lives to a great capacity. Many cops are just I don't know nature versus nurture, but they have a great capacity for resilience. They can handle a lot of stuff, but they can't flex it, right? They can't state switch from being on duty to being off duty, and that ends up causing problems, in when they're off. And again, it can be confusing. You can be a great leader at work and you can struggle to be a leader in the home. And it's a big part of what I coach and what I help people with is understanding that state switching and um, showing up high performance at work and showing up high performance as a father, as a partner, as a friend off work as well.
Yeah, and I wrote a piece not too long ago, and basically the the lesson, the moral of the piece is, wellness is not optional, it's operational.
I love
And
that statement.
I really want people to think about that because I think in policing, and I'm guilty as someone that came from a nutrition and exercise background, like that was always a strong emphasis. Now, I'm thankful for that because it led me down a very, some positive outlets for, you know, uh, stress regulation. I was a little bit late to the game, on mindfulness and meditation. And but in this process, in the program that we do, the metabolic reset program, where we start with comprehensive lab test,
Hmm.
we call the famous police panel. There's really 7 lines of data that we're looking at there, and we call that program "The Blood Doesn't Lie," and I've had the honor to present that with Kevin Gilmartin, and he wrote the book Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. I think most people are very familiar with that in policing, and it's still one of the most recommended books for cops and families that I would ever recommend. And even he, Kevin admitted that, like, and he changes the way he presents his material, to really kind of talk about what we call the insulin resistant bear, and to highlight the physiological expression of stress in the body and what it does to our HPA axis and our cortisol pathways and how
Yeah.
that impacts insulin. And so the point that I make in these programs, that we can tell ourselves a lot of stories about why or when we're going to fix something or when we're going to change a habit. When I get to that day shift, I'll start sleeping better because I'm going to do this. When I get that new assignment, I'll start exercising. On January 1st, I'm going to change my nutrition.
Hmm.
When I buy that new meditation chair, I'll start my practice.
Right.
And so we kind of have we set up these deals in our mind, but like the the thing that I always try to emphasize to really drive this point home is there's a reason why cops die at 25 times the rate from cardiovascular disease than they do from violent assaults.
Hmm.
There's a reason why we're dying at 12 times the rate of suicide than by violent assaults.
Hmm.
And there's a reason why we like to go to the range and shoot, to do jujitsu and, roll on the mat, go to the gym and work out. And there's a reason we avoid sitting down in silence with ourselves for 20 minutes
Right.
and in doing a breathing practice. There's a reason why we don't, eat the salad, or we have that snack before we go to bed. There are hormones that are driving a lot of these decisions, and there's pain points that we naturally try to avoid, when we should honestly be leaning into them. And the I guess the ultimate lesson in all of that is, like, it can't just be one thing. You can start with one thing, but you have to build these, I'd like to say, these handful of certain non-negotiables for yourself that you're going to practice
Yeah.
and that you're going to build into your daily routine, um, before you're going to see real progress. And one of the reasons I love using the labs, is because we can give people some tangible data, and again, why we call it, say, the blood doesn't lie, is because I can test you, and then I can retest you, and I can show you if anything's changed, if it's gotten better, or if it's progressed in, maybe
Right.
in a negative way. And then we can talk about, well, what did you do? And it doesn't matter what you say you did, it only matters what you actually did. And so as cops,
Mhm.
we tap into that investigator, that curiosity mindset, that cat and mouse game that you're talking about, except but it's
Yeah.
with ourselves. It's like,
Yeah.
why do I convince myself that it's okay to drink 3 beers before I go to bed, when I know
Right.
that it's going to wreck my sleep? Or maybe I didn't know
Right.
it's going to wreck my sleep, but someone now is telling me that's, I'm not going to get good recovery
Yeah.
if I do that.
Yeah. I think like the awareness is so critical, right? The awareness is is such a big part of it. And I think awareness first, energy capacity second. It's a cascading. I really talk about a lot about you have to cascade, right? You have to apply that one habit that you have the capacity and surplus for, and that as you get consistency with it, okay, that's going to build. Now I can add another habit, and I think so much like again, what I've seen is starting with that nervous system regulation and ORSM, operational reset stack method, this method that I teach, these are very fast, simple, practical, tactical protocols chains that we can stack on each other that are going to address the stress response in real time. What does that do? Why would we start there? Well, we would start there because you are going to now affect your energy, your internal state of being. You're going to create some flexibility in that so that when the time comes, you got to make that decision to either have those 3 beers, eat that candy bar, um, you know, whatever the thing is that you're having to make a decision on, you have better quality of decision making, you have better impulse control. And now you've made that one decision. Boom. It's a cascading effect that motivates to fuel a little more discipline, right? Motivation is going to go up and down. The beauty in it is if we can do the things that we need to do, we can say and do the same in spite of the motivation, whether we want to or not. It doesn't matter if we're feeling like it or not. Can we fuel the discipline? And this usually comes with our why. Have we tapped into our why enough to say, you know what, I am going to do this. I am going to make that correct decision right now, even though I don't feel like it. God, I want to have that Mars bar. I want to have those 3 beers. I'm feeling irritated with my kids right now. I want to blow up at them. No, we can, in spite of those feelings, because feelings are fickle, we can make a useful decision. And again, it's so often for me, I've seen it start the regulation that we've talked about, because now you have the capacity and the ability to not be stuck in that fight or flight situation where you do have the adrenaline spike and the body bracing and the dysregulated breathing. And if you've been aware enough about it, you can go, oh shit, I feel that in my chest. Like, what is that? Oh, that's a physiological response to what you want to do. All right, I got a couple little stacks that I can use. Now I can adjust my own experience. And um, again, it's so critical. It was critical for me to figure that out. And it's why, again, I'm so passionate about coaching it that way and starting with these things, because then, to your point, somebody can have the energy to say, all right, I'm going to go get that blood work. I'm going to hit up Patrick. I'm going to start doing this stuff. And now I'm going to see some real tangible data as well. I have the awareness of my own physical being. Now I want to have the internal awareness of data on paper. Now my why just keeps getting fueled more and more. And all of this benefit is going to cascade to a place where I'm a changed person. I'm showing up in a different way. I'm proud of the person that I'm looking at in the mirror. And my experience from 3, 6, 12 months ago is completely changed. I love those transformations. It's why I love coaching.
Yeah, that's it, and it's very rewarding. But sometimes let's just say, in your case, and you share whatever you're comfortable sharing, but
Yeah.
um, you kind of alluded to it already. Like, hey, I went from one agency to another, thinking the grass is going to be greener, the problems, this is going to solve my problem. But like you said, right, you're still the same person unless you've made some changes.
Yeah.
You're just bringing you someplace else, and then the move to Minnesota and back. I mean, did you have something? Um, was it something like a critical incident or an event or something like that, or was it just really the combination of all these little things, the death by a thousand cuts, so to speak, where they just start
Mhm.
adding up? And this is where I think the next evolution in wellness really is. We're right on the cusp of some really cool technologies that can assist us in illuminating this problem because it's not, I
Mhm.
mean, it is a problem. It's there. It's just that we've just historically not had a good way to recognize it. And we've kind of tried to piecemeal, or what my buddy Greeny would say, right, is like we've got these silos in where we think the solutions are, but the answer really
Yep.
is to bust down the silos and we got to get everything into this pot. But I mean, for you in particular, like what actually like was there something that led you to recognize I'm the problem and what was it that got you on this pathway to where you are now?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that it was probably my first divorce that I would okay, let me back it up. I think it was my two divorces. My first one right after I left law enforcement and moved to Minnesota, came back shortly thereafter. I was divorced on like still disconnected, still discontent. I didn't understand what the trauma that I had gone through. I'd lost my dad as well. That added to it. All of the stuff that I had seen and done and experienced in law enforcement, including admin betrayals and things like that. Um, it had just stacked up. And then I went into this other relationship, and that was great for a while, but then it was a lot of drinking, and I was covering up this trauma with this drinking, with weed and with these other things, business, trying to be creative. I was feeding external stuff. I was seeking validation externally. And then I got into I was in that divorce happened. And I think the accumulation of like those two things was like, I don't know what's the problem here? And I had to look in the mirror and I had to go, okay, I'm the problem. And I need to figure out what I need to do about it. And I had been meditating quite some time and I had been seeking ways to figure this out. I went down a path of plant medicines and alternative therapy for not just recreation. I was still trying to hide my trauma in certain places, but I was also looking for an unlock. Like, how do I unlock this for myself? And how do I become the person that I'm proud of? And that was many years of trying these different things. And there was a point where, again, there was a point where that relationship had broken down as well, and I was on I started making some better decisions with my fitness and with my mindset, and I had gotten mentorship at this time, and really leaned into meditation, had gotten sober, and I talk about this story. This was the defining moment of I'm going to create the man that I'm proud of. And I was visiting my son in California. I was living in Denver and I was helping him put away some of his clothes. His mom had just washed them and I was hanging out in his room with him and there was this cape, a kid's cape, a Batman cape or something and and I was like, "Hey, where does this go?" And he goes, "Oh, that goes in your drawer down on the bottom there." And I'm like, "Interesting. Like what's my drawer? Tell me about it." He goes, "Oh, that's the costume drawer. You're a dad costume." And I was like, whoa, okay. Like cool, man. We put it away, and that lodged in my mind, that comment, that he's viewing me in a certain way of what is it? What costume am I wearing? A clown costume, a superhero costume? Like, what are these attributes that I want him to see in this costume that he views me wearing? And that night I wrote down trustworthy, protector, honest, say and do the same. These qualities that I said from this point forward, this is my why: to be the best dad, to be the best husband, to be the best father. I wasn't in a relationship at that time. But I knew that if that ever came, that I would show up in a different way. And I started working really, really hard at those small nervous system regulation. I did an incredible program called Brain Highways. My fitness got locked in, my nutrition got locked in. I got additional mentorship from somebody that had walked the path that I saw was useful. And I started building the costume that I wear now. And it's just this, right? And it can change. I can add new pieces to the costume that I find useful, and I'm going to show up for people in a certain way. Um, but I'm happy for all of those experiences because they made me, it's the age old adage, right? They made me who I am today. And that is totally true. I'm happy for the 8 years that I did in law enforcement. I'm happy for the time as a teacher, for the failed relationships, for the, you know, struggle with my kids, to now being in a place where I can show up really, really well for them. And if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't be as strong as I am now and as happy as I am now. One of my mentors said, highest truth is highest joy is highest level of functioning. I found my highest truth in the things that I put in my life and surrounded myself with, and it has created in me highest joy and, man, highest functioning for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's to hear, to hear your son say that that's your costume. Yeah, that's
It's heavy
that definitely
duty. Like as a
yeah, it
as a
is
dad,
real.
it was heavy duty.
And and that's a lot of the issues that police officers face, even like some of these saying like and this is like just getting like people to a point where they have just a little bit higher level of self-awareness, like
Yeah,
tweaking that EQ a little bit. And it's hard if you're working nights and you're sleep deprived and you got a couple
yeah,
of you got a secondary job that you're working. But you're also, you're on call for your specialty unit that you're on, and you just don't
yeah.
realize like you got a lot, you got all these things in the air that you're managing all the time. And it can only take one thing, for it to all come crashing down. And you know what
Yeah.
what I hope people can take away from this conversation is, that it's, there is a path forward for everybody. And,
Yeah.
it just really just kind of, it's like Lao Tzu says, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And you just kind of have to decide what that
Yeah.
step is. And, like anchoring yourself in your why, and then having like your son say something to you that just, that does kind of stop you cold, right? Like it really, like, okay, this is,
It did.
it
It
anchors you.
was one of those moments. Yeah, it was one of those moments where I was just like, it came so easy off of his tongue and hit me so hard to my heart that I was like, okay, damn it. I'm tired of this shit. Like, I'm tired of not really being proud of who I'm showing up as. Even though I was a good dad, and I'm a good person, I didn't feel like I was being I didn't have those non-negotiables. I had all these things kind of that I was juggling, and it pushed me onto that path of getting really connected with that why. The great Jim Rohn says, if your why is big enough, the how is easy. And I started this was critical for me too, Patrick, was I started really viewing things from a reductionary standpoint. what can I reduce out of my life? Maybe not add. What do I have to reduce out of my life that's not serving the purpose that I want to accomplish right now? And I just started chucking things, whether it was people in my life, experiences that I thought I needed, things that I, was involved with. What else can I get rid of to build capacity and space for the thing that I really want to do? And that is build the person that I'm proud of so I can show up for others and teach them how to do that as well. And it's available to you for anybody out there that's feeling those feelings of, you know, maybe you are a go-getter and doing really well at work, but you're showing up in a way that you're not proud of out of work, and or you're struggling with your habits and you just can't get them to stick. There's a path forward to that. And you just got to reach out. You got to be willing to say, I don't know it all. Let me just tap in with somebody that has walked down this path that I see can maybe give me a little bit of benefit and help me along the way. Structure and accountability were huge. It's why I got mentorship. And when I had that, things changed for me.
All right. Well, there's a bunch of other stuff that we could talk about, but we've been going for an hour and a half now, so I think
I
that's
love it,
maybe
man.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up, and we'll have to think about jumping on another one of these again. This has been a lot
Agreed.
of fun. I think I got to item two
Yeah.
and like the 10 items that I was going to chat with you about, but um, no,
Well,
that's
I
cool.
like it.
So
These are the kind of conversations I love, man. We talk a little bit of creativity and we talk a little bit of personal development. Man, I'm in heaven.
yeah, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and where can if they're interested in mentorship and coaching from you, how can people reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way is on Instagram. I'm on other social media platforms as well, but Instagram at Joe Swanson Tactical. I'm there. You DM me, you're gonna get me. And we can just start that conversation around one-on-one coaching, mentorship, get inside the community that I'm building, and um, I have a package available for you, and we can talk about what your need is. Whether do you just need a little bit of traction and some guidance? Do you need to get that traction and then go deeper on these changes? Do you want to just, get lined up with structure and community that is going to be, you know, long lasting? Any of that stuff is available. So, and if you're a department, a leader in a department, the workshop that I teach, Tactical Resilience, is based in this nervous system flexibility and stress load management. ORSM, Operational Reset Stack Method, is a stack based human performance system that I created. 36 stacks, all can be done in under 3 minutes, addresses the stress response in real time, made for first response, because we are time restraint between calls. You know, much of our experience is time restraint. So, how do we get tactical about dealing with these things? We use a system, and it's a system I teach in departments, and is a core part of also my coaching. But yeah, just reach out to me, joeswansontactical.com or at Joe Swanson Tactical on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so you can get to me there.
Well,
But I would love to have the conversation, whether you're an individual or you're a department. Let's get together and let's get you optimized.
I love it. I'm on Instagram, I should say, in I guess the fact that I have an account. So like I have my personal account is Omega Flan in Omega. It's funny because, when people hear that nickname, like that was my nickname from when I worked narcotics. And
Yeah.
you would think it's like because, oh, it's like Alpha and Omega, right? No, I got that nickname because I was always telling people make sure they're eating their fish oil and getting their omega-3 fatty acids. And then,
Great
you know,
advice.
and then in the CrossFit, when when we owned a CrossFit gym, my wife's nickname, hers was Alpha because she was always kicking everybody's asses on the workouts, including
I
mine.
love it. I love it.
But
Amazing.
it's funny because I just while we're here and like I'm not good about it, Instagram, but I am on. I do have a large following on LinkedIn, and that's where I spend a lot of my time. But I I pulled up your account, and the first thing I see here is on the first page is our interview that we did a few weeks ago, and I just saw
Yeah.
that I have a different scally cap on, but I'm wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, I love it, man.
I got to
You
refresh
got
my
it definitely
wardrobe.
a great style. And some of the stuff that came out of that pod was awesome, man. It's great when somebody can articulate in a way that's made for short clips. And we got to it, man. We got to a lot of the heart of reset, nervous system regulation, of optimization, right? I love the name of your podcast because it's truly what we as humans are striving for, many of us, as we come out of that funk. We want to get optimized. We have that dream, and there's ways to it, brother. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for having me on the show to be able to share a little bit of my story. And anybody that wants to reach out, just reach out. I'm easy to get a hold of.
Awesome. Thanks again. I appreciate it. Joe Swanson of Joe Swanson Tactical. I'm looking at him right now on Instagram. You can find him on LinkedIn, and we'll put some of those links in the show notes as well. So
Sweet.
appreciate it. Appreciate you spending some of your valuable time with us. All right, and everyone, till we get our next episode. I'll be 1042.